right, let's begin then just by giving a little bit of background. Remind people who Ibrahim Todashev is and what happened.
Sure. Ibrahim Todashev was shot and killed in his home by an FBI agent after over 4 or 5 hours of interrogation in his house. He was shot over 7 times while he was unarmed, and with the final bullet ultimately being in the top of his head.
And there's been questions about what happened during that interrogation and why he was killed. The FBI originally said that they felt that they were in danger, but what is the status of what people think actually happened?
Sure. Well, it's been months and nobody really knows exactly what happened because the FBI has not released all the information it has. Initially they said that he was armed, and then they kept contradicting themselves. Ultimately, we found out that really he wasn't armed when he was shot and killed. So that raised a lot of questions as to why he was killed and what could have been done differently to avoid his death. After a lot of pressure, we finally got commitments from the state attorney's office and the federal prosecutor's office to conduct investigations to see if there were any criminal violations of Ibrahim's civil rights, and it really shed light as to why a Florida resident was shot and killed in his own home after 5 hours of interrogation by an officer. We've learned a lot of interesting facts about his killing. We've learned that, for example, all the bullets came from one officer, that only one officer drew his weapon, which really shows that the killing maybe was unnecessary, because law enforcement officers are trained that if a shooting is warranted, they all draw their weapons. The fact that only one officer drew his weapon while the others stood there wondering what's going on, raises a lot of questions and concerns. It also looks like he was shot while he was either on the ground or while he was falling to the ground. Several experts reviewed the photographs of his body with all the bullet wounds and said it looks like he was killed or shot while he was on the ground. And furthermore, his body lay dead right at the corridor of his exit. So it seems like maybe he was trying to leave the interrogation. And now, in light of what we discovered happened within the past week, this raises even more serious questions, because now we're learning that the FBI is actually going on to harass and intimidate and grossly violate the civil rights of those individuals around Ibrahim, those individuals who have spoken out since Ibrahim's killing.
You mentioned this arrest. Who was arrested? I think it was a friend of Ibrahim Todashev's who was arrested in the last week or so. And how was he treated, and why was he arrested?
Well, the arrest of Ibrahim's friend, Mr. Ashur, really raises a lot of questions and, in fact, a lot of concerns, because based on the arrest, it appears that the FBI is just egregiously violating the civil rights and just completely disregarding the Bill of Rights, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment. And that's really concerning, that unfortunately appears that they've gone out of control with complete disregard to the constitutional liberties that make America such a wonderful nation. Mr. Ashur was arrested last week on the 18th of September. When he was arrested, we immediately reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI, said we need to speak to our client, we want to know where our client is, and we are formally requesting on behalf of our client that you not speak to him without our presence there as his counsel, as his attorneys. And for days, we could not even locate our client. For days, the FBI would not even confirm that they had him or where he was. And just yesterday, on the 24th, so several days later, we were finally able to meet with our client, Mr. Ashur, and what we learned was very shocking. Apparently, they interrogated him for over 6 hours, and throughout that period, he was asking for his attorney. He said, I want my attorneys here, I don't want to speak to you without my attorneys, and they just completely ignored him. They said, that's not happening. And for us, that's unacceptable, that's un-American. Frankly, that's illegal. According to the U.S. Constitution, according to the Bill of Rights, you cannot question and interrogate an individual once he's made a request for his attorney until you've contacted that person's attorney. And the fact that, one, they did not get in touch with us, they did not let him speak to his attorneys, and two, they continued to question him even after he requested his attorneys, is just blatant violations of the civil rights, and makes us wonder, if they were blatantly violating Ashur's civil rights during this questioning, what kind of violations occurred against Ibrahim before he was killed?
Was this gentleman, Mr. Ashur, was he charged with any crime?
Eventually, he was charged with a completely unrelated crime. So what happened is, for those over 6 hours, he wasn't being asked about any alleged involvement in any crime. He was simply being asked about Ibrahim Todashev. I mean, the FBI used that as an opportunity to get as much dirt against Ibrahim Todashev as they can, the man whom they killed. Appears that they're acting very frantically, trying to cover their tracks and trying to paint a bad picture of Ibrahim, and therefore arresting one of his close friends. And remember, Ashur was the individual who took Ibrahim's father, Abdul Baki, around town once Abdul Baki came in. He took him to all of the meetings with the state attorney's office, the prosecutor's office. He took him to all the media interviews. So he was very helpful to the Todashev family after Ibrahim was killed. So it appears that it was twofold. One, retaliatory, And two, it appears that they were trying to get dirt on Ibrahim. And I think that's a sign of desperation. Because for us, it doesn't matter, was Ibrahim a good guy or a bad guy? It doesn't matter. All that matters is why was he shot and killed, and how could these things have been prevented? So the fact that they questioned him for over 6 hours on Ibrahim Todashev, not on any alleged crime, and then ignored his repeated request for an attorney, raises a lot of concerns for us.
What's the status of any investigations? The Department of Justice did a probe into the killing of Todashev, and is the U.S. Attorney looking into it as well?
So both the Department of Justice and the State Attorney's Office are both conducting their own independent investigations into what happened, looking at several, whether several laws were violated, including whether there was a criminal violation of Ibrahim Todashev's civil rights, also whether there was a violation of the use of force policy, and whether there was a violation of deadly force under Florida law as well. We're still waiting on those results. I mean, at this point, we don't even have the medical examiner's report, and I don't think that will be released until their investigation is complete. Meanwhile, CAIR-Florida, I mean, we've conducted our own independent investigation, which has brought to light a lot of troubling things, but we're waiting to release that investigation until we confirm many of the facts there, and we can't confirm them until we have the evidence that's within the control of the FBI and the prosecutor's office at this time. One thing I want to add that's very disturbing is, look, this is not the first time the FBI has been caught intimidating people associated with Mr. Todashev. This has been happening since the day he was killed, right? We have very troubling evidence of how they confronted family members of Ibrahim, saying, we want to be the first to let you know we killed Ibrahim, and you're gonna spend the rest of your life in jail unless you tell us, everything you know about him. So very egregious conduct. And not only that, there was Ibrahim's mother-in-law. The FBI opened up an investigation against her once she appeared at the first press conference to speak out against the killing of her son. Tatiana, his former girlfriend, was also faced threats by the FBI. And in fact, we have an FBI agent named Agent Hansen, who several people have came to us and said, look, Agent Hansen came to us in Orlando. This is an FBI agent, and he claims to falsely be an FBI immigration attorney, an FBI immigration agent. And there's no such thing as an FBI immigration agent. The agency itself will confirm that. And he goes to these individuals and he says, look, you have two options, all right? You can either spy for us, you can tell us everything you know about Ibrahim, and you can spy on the local mosques, spy on the local houses of worship, spy on local Muslim restaurants, and if you don't spy on for us, we're going to throw you all in jail. And we believe maybe this is what happened to Ashur, that they made these kinds of threats against him, and when he didn't give in to these kinds of illegal and unethical threats, they fulfilled their promise. It's very concerning. Look, this should concern all of us, not just the Chechen community, not just the Muslim community, but all Americans. When the FBI is going around blatantly violating the civil rights of lawful residents in this country, we really need to be on guard and hold them accountable.
And I want to move on from the Todashev case for just a second, unless there's anything else that needs to be said about the Todashev case, and ask you about what happened at the Heart Board the other night. The Hillsborough Area Regional Transit had originally declined an ad on its buses for CAIR, for your group. What happened then this week?
Well, this week it looks like Heart had a change of heart, so to speak, and they corrected, I think, the mistake they made previously, and they voted unanimously to approve our ads, which are simply promoting civil rights, promoting diversity, and promoting people to make use of the resources we offer to the community. I mean, CAIR-Florida now is probably, and I'm proud to say, one of the premier local civil rights organizations. We're completely locally funded. We're the only organization that has 4 full-time attorneys offering free legal services to victims of discrimination, victims to government harassment, regardless of their race, their religion, their ethnicity, or anything like that. In fact, one of the recent clients we helped was a Russian disabled woman who was Christian and who was facing housing discrimination because of her disability. We helped her keep her home. So we're about defending civil rights for all people, and unfortunately, I think due to some prejudice and some misinformation, Heart initially denied our very benign, simple ads, which said, protecting civil rights, protecting diversity, and had a picture of our diverse staff, people of all faiths, all ethnicities. They initially denied it, I think, due to misunderstanding and due to ignorance, and maybe due to even some prejudice as well, and pressure from hate groups, pressure from anti-Muslim hate groups who hate anything that has even a remote connection to the Muslim community. But I think through our lobbying efforts and through the outpouring of support from the local community, several editorials from the mainstream papers, and just the interfaith and intercultural communities speaking out and offering support for our organization and our track record of defending civil rights and also protection of freedom of speech, they had a change of heart yesterday and voted unanimously to approve our ads. So we look forward to having those run in a couple of weeks.
Thanks so much for your time today.
Hey, thanks so much, Seán. Always a pleasure to be here.